Welcome everyone. Now Alana's she's gonna go to chat. She's gonna tell us the title of this. She's got the title. I told her what I was going to talk about, and I can't remember exactly how I expressed the title. So she's going to tell us when she shows up. The title is something along the lines of, I would say, the conundrum between our sincerity and our conditioning, because they pull us in opposite directions. So there's a side of us that's just wants Krishna, and a side of us that doesn't. And we have to deal with both, right? So, go to chat, and I think you have to join Ustream or something, get a login, and then you can, and I can see who's here. And then you can also ask questions. And we're just setting up and waiting for everybody to come, and getting ready to record this. We have video. This is going to be recorded audio. It's going to be recorded video. It's recorded Ustream. We have our bases covered. It's now 40 degrees. We have air conditioning. That room out there is cool. This room is not so cool. But we're doing our best. I want to wait for everybody to come. Krishna, before I begin, I don't want to start before everybody understands. But what we can do, Alana, so what's the actual, can you give this a title? Can you just write in the, the chat box? This is the exact title I said this was going to be. Sincerity versus conditioning. We're dealing with the conundrum. We've got the opposite poles. It seems like opposite poles of sincerity and conditioning. It's an amazing verse. There's an amazing verse in the Bhagavatam. If I could only find it. The topic is, okay, we're just going to begin and then some may come late. The topic is sincerity and its role in balancing or dealing with our conditioning. So we're going to be talking about a conundrum which exists when you become a devotee. It'll start existing practically right from the beginning. And it's going to continue pretty much through your conditioned state of Krishna consciousness. It will be eliminated to some degree when you hit the stage of nishta, when you become steady, but it'll still be there. And really, then as you progress from there, it will be eliminated more and more and more, until it's practically entirely eliminated on the stage of, the stage of bhava. Oh, yeah, that's better. So the conundrum is, and I think everyone experiences this, when you become a devotee, the reason we all become devotees is to develop love for Krishna, to become pure. There's this need within us, or we could call it sincerity. There's this sincerity, this need that I want to become pure. It may also be accompanied by the need to want to help people, or the need to make the world better, or all of those together. Make myself better, make others better, make the world better. And so that is why someone seriously takes to Krishna consciousness, because there's that desire to become pure. And that's what I would call sincerity. It's that I want to be Krishna conscious. That's what I really want, deep down inside. I may not act that way all the time. You might even think I'm bluffing, that I really don't want it by the way I behave. But deep down inside, that's what I want. If I could just have it, if I could just get it without having to do anything, I would get it. That's why I become a devotee. So then you'll find and you'll see when devotees are, especially when they're chanting, you can see how serious they are. Excuse me. You can see how sincere they are. You see a devotee chanting, devotees praying, very sincerely. And one of the things that you'll notice, or if you haven't, they say the face is the index of the mind. So what you actually can see in the devotee is this gap between where they are and where they want to be. And you can see that move when they're chanting, that I'm here, but I want to be here, or I know I should be here, and that's my pure state. But I'm here. And so Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. You can see that chanting of the Maha Mantra is in that mood of filling that gap. So therefore we put our sincerity in. All sincerity that we have, at least we should, when we chant, we put that sincerity into our chanting. In the hopes, in the attempts of filling that gap between where I am and where I know I should be, why I join Krishna consciousness to become like that. You see, Hare Krishna, I'm praying to Krishna. Krishna, please, I want to be pure. And so often you can see in the heart or the face of a devotee that feeling that I'm not pure. And it's a kind of disgusting feeling. And sometimes you can see that when devotees are chanting. You can kind of see that prayer manifest as a kind of a disgust with myself for having done certain things and being still attached to doing things, even if I don't do them, but perhaps still attached to them, thinking about them, and not so easily giving up what I should give up, and not always adopting the mentality or the practices I should adopt to be a pure devotee that would align with that feeling of sincerity. So there's that feeling of sincerity. There's also sometimes a feeling of disgust with oneself for not aligning my actions with my sincerity. I think you're following me. If you're not, then you can just, in the chat box, ask me to explain it again. And I think we all have this experience, so it shouldn't be difficult for us to understand. So then other aspects of this this conundrum, where I could be, for example, very sincerely serving and very sincerely dedicated to service, and very sincerely chanting, sincerely reading. And then even in the same day, or even at the same time, completely opposite thoughts of devotional service, self-centered thoughts, or even thoughts of hatred or envy, or very lustful thoughts, they come to me, or worse, desires, not just thoughts, but active desires. And so it's like two polar opposites are existing within me at one time. And it can be extremely frustrating, because then you might question, well, am I sincere? And if I were sincere, why would I be feeling anything else other than the sincere desire to be Krishna conscious? It is a good question. And sometimes in answering that question, we might think, well, actually, I'm not sincere. If I were sincere, then I would be much more focused in my spiritual life. And there may be some truth to that, but what I want to point out in this class is that it's not entirely true. That one can be sincere and one can also be weak at the same time. So weak is our normal condition. That's the condition we come to Krishna consciousness in. We come in a weak condition, what Prabhupada called conditioning. Even psychologists use that word, conditioning. Conditioning just means habit. It just means like the molding of clay. That's how the clay has become conditioned. It takes on a certain shape, a certain form. So we've been conditioned, and our conditioning goes back many, many lifetimes. So when we come into Krishna consciousness, there's a very deeply rooted programming going on within us. And that programming, as you know, is that I am the enjoyer, and I am the center, and I am the controller. And so when you become a devotee, you understand you're not the controller, you're not the enjoyer, and you're not the center. But understanding that and feeling that are two completely different things. And that's where the frustration comes. Because you would think, you say, well, I understand it, so why do I still feel it? There must be something wrong with me. Because I'm not always feeling the desire to be Krishna conscious. I'm not always thinking in a Krishna conscious way. At the same time, I feel that I'm a sincere devotee, that I'm trying. So how is it that I'm trying, but sometimes I'm basically feeling just like everyone else in this world, just like people who are not practicing Krishna consciousness? Or you might even think sometimes you feel worse than other people. You might think, actually, there are other people that don't have the intensity of envy that I have, or resentment that I have, or many people don't have the degree of lust or greed that I have. So you become bewildered. And how is that? I'm practicing Krishna consciousness. These other things are there. So it's very important to understand why those other things are there and how to deal with them. Because if you don't understand that, two things are going to happen. Number one, those other things, that conditioned side, can discourage you to the point where you could actually stop your sadhana or weaken or slacken your sadhana. And secondly, it can just confuse you, frustrate you, bewilder you, and just make your life very miserable. So we need to understand a little bit more about conditioning. And then also we need to understand a little bit more about the process of devotional service and how it deals with our conditioning. Right? So you have two things. One is your nature, and one is your conditioning. You know, when I use the word conditioning, other people may use it differently. I'm using it in terms of anarthas, or things which can be purified. When I talk about nature, that's not something that will be purified. It'll be used. So we all have a nature: Brahman nature, Vaishya nature, Kshatriya nature, Shudra nature, extrovert, introvert, boisterous, quiet, like that. So for most of us, those tendencies we have with the physical body are just what comes with the body. They're not conditioned in this life, or they're not conditioned in a way that we even need to change them, that there's anything wrong. It's just who we are. But when I use the word conditioning in the context, you should understand it when I use it, is the context of anarthas, or unwanted things. Habits which have lingered on for many lifetimes. Material hankerings, material attachments, lust, anger, greed, like that. So, first thing to understand is that devotional service is more powerful than any of those. And if we execute devotional service properly, those tendencies, although they may still remain until we're on a higher level of devotional service, those tendencies will not control our life. They may be there, but they will not control it. And that's the first distinction we need to make. Because a lot of times we get extremely discouraged when we see them. But it's better to understand that conditioning is normal if, obviously, you're a conditioned soul, then it's normal. That's what it means to be a conditioned soul. And the fact that we've cultivated that way of thinking for so many lifetimes is that it's deeply ingrained with us. And therefore the word in Sanskrit is samskara, and samskara means impression, like a line in stone is an impression. And that impression in stone doesn't go away easily, because it's in stone. It's not an impression in sand, which you can just rub out. And so for lifetimes we're engaged in material activities, thinking I'm the enjoyer, I'm the center, I'm the controller. Everything in this world is meant for my enjoyment. Enjoy it, just don't hurt anybody, enjoy it. So that's the idea, right? Most people have. So we've cultivated that for many, many lifetimes. So then, because we've cultivated it, it's become our conditioned nature. And therefore, when we become devotees, even though we don't want to think like that, we find ourselves thinking in ways which aren't Krishna conscious, thinking in ways which are very self-centered. Oh, I would like that, or I don't like this person, or I wish that person were dead, of course. Hopefully you don't think that way. But that thought may have crossed your mind sometime, because that's how many of us thought before we were devotees, or we thought that way in other lifetimes. So we find all these thoughts cross our minds that just don't belong there in Krishna consciousness. And they cross our minds sometimes in a way in which we feel we have no control over. They're just there. They just show up, like, a guest shows up. You didn't invite them. They're just there. Now what do? You have to deal with it, right? So maybe you wish the guest hadn't showed up, but they did, and so now you have to deal with it. So this is how we have to look at these desires or these thoughts when they show up. We have to remind ourselves they're conditioned thoughts. We have to remind ourselves these are not things which I want to cultivate, but these are things that come up from time to time because they're habits. And it's not me, and it's not what I want. I want Krishna consciousness. So instead of thinking to yourself, well, if I want Krishna consciousness, then why am I thinking like this? It's better to think, in my present state, until I progress further, I'm going to want Krishna consciousness, and still these desires from time to time will come up, depending on the level of my practice, depending on my condition at what's going on in my sadhana, what's going on in my sangha, what's going on in my service, where I'm living. There's so many factors that will affect your consciousness. And so, obviously when you're in better consciousness and you're doing well in Krishna consciousness, material desire will slacken. When you're not doing so well, it will increase. At the same time, Krishna says the modes of nature, they're always shifting. So sometimes even we can't always tell why, but sometimes we become a little more overwhelmed by material desire. So it's very important to not become discouraged by this. And the way we don't become discouraged is we accept it. We say, in my condition, this is natural, it's normal. Like maybe a doctor would tell you, you have a disease, this is what we're going to do. And then a month later you come back and you say, this is how I feel. And he says, don't worry, that's normal. You are getting better. So we have to see it a little bit like that there are certain symptoms that come with being a conditioned soul. And they're just going to be there until we come to higher levels of Krishna consciousness. For example, false ego, the desire to control, sexual desire in its gross and subtle forms. When do we completely become free from that? How do we become free, and when? Well, ultimately you become free when you reach a level of prema. And you don't become free before that. So what are you going to do until you become free? You can't just lament that that desire is there. But what you understand is that that desire goes away gradually as you come to higher levels of Krishna consciousness. And until you come to higher levels of Krishna consciousness, what do you have to do? Or how do you deal with it? You have to learn how to accept that it's going to be there. You have to learn how to tolerate it. And you have to learn how not to act on it. And not become discouraged that it's there. And there's two verses that come to mind. One verse is the 9th chapter, text number, I believe it's 30. Text number 30. Apichet Sudaracharam. And Krishna is talking about this situation in which a devotee is trying his or her best to be Krishna conscious, and sometimes they slip. And why do they slip? They slip due to conditioning. And because they slip due to conditioning, not because they want to, not because it was intentional, not because they're trying to cheat the system and think, well, it doesn't matter what I do, because I'm a devotee and Krishna will free me from the sinful reaction, so I can just enjoy. They're not thinking like that. They're thinking, I want to be a devotee. That's what I want, and I sincerely want it, and that's all I want. And then, but due to my conditioning, I accidentally did something wrong. So in this verse, to establish this is a reality that affects many devotees, Krishna said, don't ever think of that person not as a devotee. Don't ever think of that person not as a sadhu. In fact, Prabhupada or the Acharyas say that Krishna has ordered you to think that way. It's my order, Krishna said. I order you to see that person. I order you to see that person as a sadhu. And so Krishna explains why, and Krishna Chakravarti Thakur, commenting on this verse, he explains why. And it's the reason I gave, that he's not committing sin willfully. He doesn't want to. And not only that, he's regretting it. So when he makes the mistake, due to some weakness, he regrets it. And so Krishna says, because it's not intentional, consider him a sadhu. Why? Because the main aspect of his life is service. That's what he's all about. He's all about surrender. He's all about service. And that's why when he falls or he makes a mistake, he regrets it. If there's no regret, it's a completely different situation. Thank you. There's no regret, there's a completely different situation. Sugarcane juice, 10 rupees a glass. In India. How much is it in Sydney? $5 a glass? Maybe we should send you gallons of sugarcane juice. You could build a Mayapur temple that way. Sadhu, Krishna says, Sadhu, sadhur eva samantavya. Consider this devotee as sadhu. Now, there's another verse in the 11th canto. And even this verse is very interesting. Krishna is describing what I'm describing right now. That you have a devotee, and a devotee is sincere, but they make mistakes. They fall down. They're weak. They do the thing. I promised myself I'll never do that, and then we do that. And so a lot of that comes from weakness, which we've cultivated for many lifetimes, and then being in an environment that feeds off that weakness. I think many of us would not go out of our way to do anything bad, but in the wrong environment we might. With the wrong association we might. Or in a moment of weakness we might. Because we have that side to us that's weak. So in this verse, Krishna is recognizing that you have a devotee who sometimes just can't give up certain habits. They're just really difficult to give up. But on the other hand, the devotee is sincere. And Krishna appreciates that sincerity, and Krishna understands the condition. And I think a lot of us don't understand the conditioning well enough, and so we allow that conditioned side of us to discourage us. And I think, I'm really bad. Even someone could think, well, I had this thought, this really bad thought, for 3 seconds, that I'm such a bad person. That's not the proper understanding. The proper understanding is you will have thoughts. So what I want to deal with in this lecture, or the essence of this class, is to help you go from the point of not being discouraged by the bad thought, but be accepting of it, not in the sense that we say it's okay, but in the sense that when it does come up, to be accepting of it, to be able to tolerate it, and to make sure that we don't act on it. Like I've told the story before. I think it's worth repeating because it's such a good story. That Arjuna lost his son in the battle of Kurukshetra. And he was very upset. And so Srila Prabhupada was questioned that if Arjuna is a pure devotee, how is it that now he's lamenting? He can't be a pure devotee because he's lamenting for the loss of his son. And Prabhupada made a very important point. He said that if you lose a son, naturally there's going to be some lamentation, there's some feeling there, because we're not stone. So something's going to be there. The Prabhupada said, but Arjuna never left the battle because of that. He never gave up his service. And this is what is so interesting about this topic, is that on one hand, you can have conditioning, which goes very deep. On the other hand, you can have sincerity, which goes very deep. And so, even though you have this conditioned side, by the grace of Krishna and by the power of your sincerity, you don't have to act on it. And so that's a very, very important point. It may be there, but always remember, you don't have to act on it just because it's there. And a lot of times, when desires are there, what do we think? Well, if it's there, it's pushing me, then I feel like, well, sooner or later, I'm going to have to do it. But if those desires have no connection to Krishna, if those desires can't help you in Krishna consciousness, what we learn from Arjuna's example is, on one hand, your mind may be distraught, but on the other hand, your connection with Krishna is so strong that even in that distraught condition, you can tolerate it, and then you can continue, as if nobody could tell you're even upset. It's just like there are many, many wonderful devotees in our movement, and a lot of times, because they're wonderful and they're strong and they're very dedicated, the other devotees think he probably or she probably doesn't have any problems, because how could you live like that? We'll try it with the door closed and see. So how could a devotee live with such enthusiasm, determination, bliss, if they have difficulty? But they actually can, because they're not allowing that difficulty to affect them. And many of us allow difficulties to affect us. Oh, my mind this, my heart this devotee said that, this temple did this, and then we get affected by it. So when Mahaprabhu says Trinadapi Sunichina, Toro Rivasishna, we should be tolerant like a tree, it also means we have to tolerate our own shortcomings. Because some of us are intolerant of ourselves. And as we become intolerant of ourselves, we start to disconnect from our sincerity. So, one of the most amazing discoveries in this topic is that you can have this amazing amount of sincerity and determination in one hand, in one side of your life, and have these other weaknesses plaguing you. And sometimes you just have to accept that due to my past sinful activities of so many lifetimes, right now these things are plaguing me. Like some of us are more forgiving, some of us are less forgiving. Some of us are more peaceful, some of us are more disturbed. Some of us are more greedy. We just need more. Even though we know we don't need it, we need it. Some of us are more lusty. We battle with lust. And so what we have to understand is we just have to accept that due to my past sinful activities, due to my past conditioned activities, right now in this body, this is, as we say, these are the deck of cards that are being handed to me. And so what we should understand, or what we need to understand, is that even those desires come shooting at us as if uncalled for due to our past conditioning, it doesn't have to deter our determination. In other words, it's not equal. You know, in one sense we might think the degree of your material desire will affect the degree of your Krishna consciousness. You can't go up in material desire and go up in Krishna consciousness, which is true. Because the symptom of advancing is material desire goes down. But when we're speaking of conditioned desires, these are not things that you're cultivating, but these are the desires that show up through the past conditioning. What we learn is that a devotee can be extremely determined to be Krishna conscious in spite of that. And so, where we get thrown off is when that desire enters our mind or our heart and we begin to focus on it. And that desire grows. And as that desire grows, what also may grow along with it is the guilt of the feeling that we're getting for cultivating that desire within us. And then it starts to grow on us and it takes more of our attention. But we don't have to. Just because it's there, we don't have to. It's just, it can be there, and you can just leave it there. And this is where your sincerity comes in. Because if you look at conditioning and sincerity, if your sincerity is always higher, then your conditioning cannot snuff out your sincerity. If your sincerity goes down, your conditioning will tend to go up. And therefore your willpower to be pure, it will decrease, and then you're in trouble. So, what does this all mean? It all means, it should help us understand the importance of cultivating sincerity. And sincerity, in Prabhupada's definition, was just the desire to be pure, to serve Krishna without any other motive than for his pleasure, to serve Guru without any other motive than for his pleasure. And it's interesting because we tend to be very selfish. Sometimes it's difficult just to serve for another person's pleasure. But that's Prabhupada's definition of sincerity. To serve without motivation. And you can be sincere from the day you become a devotee. On day one you can be sincere. That sincerity, as I said earlier, it's just your desire to want to be a pure devotee. Hare Krishna, Krishna please, I want to be a pure devotee. That's your motive. That's the motivating force in everything you do. That's what you want. That's your goal. That's the end all and be all of your life. That's what it means to be sincere. Right? Yes. So that's our biggest strength. If we don't have sincerity, then the material side, it's going to overpower us, because it can be very strong, as you know, right? But your sincerity is your greatest strength. Because why? Because what you want in the core of your heart, that Krishna reciprocates with. So if material desire comes, you don't really want it, Krishna's not going to facilitate that because he knows you don't want it. And if you want to be pure, and that's your constant prayer and desire, even though these other desires are there, that's the desire Krishna's going to fulfill. And that's why it's so important to cultivate sincerity, and that's why it's so important not to get distracted when these other desires come and get discouraged, thinking, oh, I'm so bad, something's wrong with me. And then when you think like that, you start to focus on that. And then all your trouble starts. And you naturally become discouraged, right? Look at me, I'm so this, I'm so that. And then you discourage yourself. So often we say Krishna is attracted to bhakti, he's not attracted to the external. We have the example of Sudama Vipra. So he brings Krishna some rice, chipped rice, very inexpensive, not very attractive or delicious. And Krishna just loved that, right? There was so much bhakti. It's like we say love is the most attractive thing, isn't it? It's like, what's more attractive than love? So that's what Krishna likes. And for us, as conditioned souls engaging in sadhana bhakti, our love is our sincerity, because we actually don't have love. But our sincerity is the desire and intention to serve Krishna with love, so that we don't ask anything from Krishna. So as you magnify your sincerity, intensify your sincerity, what happens? That's like your lifeline to Krishna. That's the most powerful thing you have. That's what brought you to Krishna consciousness in the very beginning, was your sincerity. That's what got you out of the material world. Think about how powerful sincerity is. When devotees, when they talk about how they became devotees, a lot of devotees they'll reflect and they'll say, I have no idea how I got out of Maya. Because it's such an amazing thing to get out of Maya. I mean, we've been in Maya since time immemorial. And to just stop material activities and become a devotee, that's like incredible. How did that happen? All your friends didn't become devotees. Your parents didn't become devotees. The president of your country didn't become a devotee, and you did. Somehow you got out of it. It's amazing. Isn't it? Yeah. So, I mean, any devotee, practically any devotee, every devotee, I think, when they look back and see how they became a devotee, it's just mystical and magical. I don't know how I was able to transform that way. But when you think about it, underlying that transformation was your sincerity. You wanted Krishna consciousness more than you wanted Maya. Although you may have been weak and didn't have the strength to fight Maya, you wanted Krishna consciousness. And that brought you into the Sangha of devotees. And that's why it said, when the disciple's ready, the guru will show up. So many people are looking for a guru, and they often ask me, well, how do I know who my guru is? And I don't even entertain that. I just say, try to become a good disciple. Try to become qualified for a good guru before you think, I have to find the right guru. Become the right disciple. And that in that sincerity of becoming the right disciple, then Krishna will guide you, or Krishna will guide the guru to you. Because now you want to advance, you need somebody to help you. So your sincerity initially brings you to Krishna consciousness, it brings you to Guru, it brings you to Prabhupada's books, somehow that you came in touch because you're sincere. But there's so many people that were walking down the street and didn't take to it. Walking in front of you, behind you, to the right of you and to the left of you, and you took it because of your sincerity. So the sincerity is the real force. And Prabhupada understood that. He had to have understood that clearly, otherwise he wouldn't have initiated us. Otherwise, how could we get out of Maya, right? It wouldn't be possible. Now, here's the part that is a little more sensitive. We have our sincerity, which is our desire to render pure devotional service and be a pure devotee someday. We have our conditioned nature, right? And then, how did Prabhupada deal with that? Well, ideally, your sincerity should match externally your environment and your life and your practice. In other words, if I say I'm a sincere devotee, and you come to my house and I'm just sitting around watching movies, it's going to be hard for you to believe. Say, well, if you're a sincere devotee, and they're not Krishna conscious movies, but I'm sitting on my bed with some potato chips, and I'm just eating and watching movies, and I'm telling you I'm very sincere in my bhakti. So you would probably question that. If you're generous, you'd question it a little bit. If you're a very strict devotee, you would terribly question it, or you wouldn't even question it. You would say, no, you're not sincere. So we can't just have sincerity alone. I'm saying sincerity is foundational, it's most important, but sincerity has to be aligned with action that reflects sincerity, which would be good sadhana. Right? So just like, let's say for example, you said, I'm a very sincere student, but you never study. It would be like that. I'm a very sincere devotee, but I don't have any sadhana. Or my sadhana is not good. Or whatever. I do things which undermine my devotional service. So, you want to be able to align your sincerity externally with something that looks sincere. Right? That makes sense?
Yeah.
So then, the power of your sincerity, then it drives you to the power of practice. Because your sincerity is your desire to become pure, and then the practice is what makes you pure. So if you have a strong desire to become pure, in theory you should have a strong practice, right? Strong desire creating strong practice. Then the material desires, because your practice is strong and your desire is strong, they won't really upset you. And when you have that experience, then the material desires, when they come up, they won't bother you. Because you know that is not what I want, and that's not what I'm going to entertain. And I'm not worried about them, because they're byproducts of my past material activities. And they will go away as I advance in devotional service. I can't just shoot them away. I actually have to transcend them. Purify them through transcendence. So as I go to a higher state of Krishna consciousness, naturally more material desires, they just leave. And the intensity of the existing material desires weakens. Right? And so that's what happens as you advance. The intensity of your material desire will weaken in the wake of your powerful devotional service. So I think we could say, if you lose sincerity, then you lose everything. As Krishna says, Nahi kalyanakrit. If you do something auspicious, durgatin tattagacchati. You'll never be vanquished. You'll always be safe, because your sincerity will keep you safe. Because this is what you want. Because it's what you want. You know, you have the confidence, Krishna will give it to you. So you're never worried that I won't get Krishna consciousness. You're completely confident. Utsaha nishtaya dharya. One of the aspects of devotional service is to be confident. And you become confident by your own experience. I'm sincere, I get mercy, I get power, and therefore I never would worry that Krishna won't always give me or fulfill my heart's desire to be pure, because I know He will. He'll always protect me from myself, right? Because that's our worry, isn't it? Who are we most more worried about? We're most worried about ourselves, isn't it? Like it's kind of, it's weird to say, and it sounds like this would be something you would say to someone who's mentally ill, but we're all mentally ill to some degree. That our biggest fear is fear of ourselves. The person we have to protect ourselves the most from is ourselves. that I may do this, I may do that, I may do something stupid, right? So, Krishna, I want you. I want to be pure devotee. You cultivate that. When you chant, you cultivate that. When you hear, you cultivate that. When you serve, you cultivate. You always cultivate that mood. That becomes your MO, your modus operandi. That's just who you are. This is what I want. And one of the things that I've realized about material desire, or one, you see, the whole point of making is you don't want to give attention to material desire because it's always looking for your attention. You know, so you want to do pure devotional service, material desire will come up and say, well, look I can offer you this right now. That pure devotional service, I mean, you've been chanting for so many years and you're so far away from it, do you really think it's worth it? You really think you're ever going to get it? Because right now I can give you this. And you know, you've restrained yourself for so many years and you're actually not very happy. So Maya says, okay, you know, like we could have something like quick and fast and fun and juicy, right? That's what we're afraid of, right? And I've said many times that Maya won't do that. We'll play those games on you unless you kind of want to play them. You're kind of open to it. So rather than, I don't like to see Maya like that. I like to see it as what it is. It's just a conditioned response to a present situation. It's a habit. It's my old habit coming. And it's not something that I want, but it comes up. And I recognize it as an old habit, which is something that came from the past, at a time when I was cultivating material desires, at a time when those desires were useful. Like in material life, sometimes to get ahead you need to compete, and you might even have to be a little rough with people. And that may work in certain environments, very passionate environments it may work. So we may carry that tendency into Krishna consciousness, and it comes up. And we recognize that's my old tendency that had validity in another situation, in another time. It was working for me. But now, it's not working. And so we just see it that way. You say, oh, it's kind of like, how should we say? It's like, you know, somebody calls you up. I don't know if this happens in your country. But you may have been, let's say, 10 years ago, no, let's say last year, you were looking for a camera. You were looking for a microphone. You were looking for lighting, all these things, the mics, a camera stand and everything, right? And then you got it all, right? And you had inquired from some store, and he made a note that he'll call you in 6 months. So then he calls you in 6 months and say, are you still interested? You say, no, I'm not interested, I already bought everything. So Maya's like that. You know, it's like, I've already bought Krishna consciousness, and Maya calls you up. You were interested in this and this and this. So when the conditioned ideas and thoughts come up, it's just like Maya's bringing up the past. And we're always wondering, why is this coming up? I'm not even interested in it. It's the past coming into the present. Because Maya can work off your conditioning. That's where she can get you, because she knows what you want. So if you're aware of what the reality is, this is just past conditioning. There's ideas coming. Because the wheel is still moving, slowly, then just see it for what it is. And then you tell the man, well, thank you for calling, but I don't need it. So you can say, Maya, well, thanks for the offer. You know, if this were 3 years ago, I would have taken it. But I don't need it now. It's a disturbance. It can be a botheration. But if you don't give it energy, it won't bother you. And what the mistake that many of us make is we give energy to things that are detrimental, because it bothers us. So, don't be bothered by your material desires. If you're not bothered by them, and you just kind of accept them, they'll come and go, and then what you want to focus on is your devotional service. And really, really massage your sincerity, your desire. I just want to be a pure devotee. That's it. My material life is over. All I want is Krishna consciousness. I just want to be pure. Nothing else. That's what it's all about. And if this other stuff comes in, it's just a salesman calling up from the past. Are you still interested? No, I'm not. Thanks for calling, but I'm not. Not at all. It's not. My life is different now. It's not what I'm doing. So, then don't think you're not sincere because those material desires are there. Right? But if you give up your Krishna consciousness, if you allow the mode of ignorance to overwhelm you, then you can say you're not sincere. And that's how Prabhupada saw it. In other words, if you're sincere, you will continue with determination. That's a test of my sincerity, that I won't give up. Yes.
But sincerity is the quality that we can improve, or sometimes we lost this quality, or how it works.
Yeah. So Leela Shakti is asking, is sincerity something that you can strengthen? Is it something you can lose? What is it and how does it work? Well,
because with the beginning person can be sincere,
yeah, and lose it.
After can lose it.
It's yeah. If you allow yourself to be distracted, if you allow unwanted desires to grow, then yeah, you can lose your sincerity, because your sincerity is that desire to be pure. And so, yeah, if you commit offenses to devotees, that might happen. If you commit offenses to the holy name, it could happen. If you just become slack in your devotional service, then I would say this being slack was not the cause of your loss of sincerity. It was a symptom of it. You understand? So what came first, the chicken or the egg? You know. That's why I was saying earlier that by looking at your actions, you can kind of calibrate or understand the degree of sincerity that you have. You might say, I just did something. If I were sincere, would I have done that? Now, thinking about it is different than doing it. I'm making a distinction, right? I'm saying the thinking process as a conditioned soul in lower stages of devotional service will be there. The sincerity, when the sincerity is there, the thinking never becomes acting, or very rarely becomes acting, right? So, don't get discouraged on the thinking level. Oh, I'm so bad, I'm thinking of this. No, but you can congratulate yourself that even though I'm thinking of this, I don't do it. Because I know that wouldn't please Guru and Krishna. So I don't do it. So that's good, right? Yeah. A lot of us, we beat ourselves up. You know, we don't acknowledge that, okay, the desire is there, but I didn't act on it. You should applaud yourself, congratulate yourself. That's really good that you're still going on. Like, oh, I'm so attracted to this or that. All right, that's not good. But just look, in spite of that attraction, you never gave into it. And you're going, every day you're going on in Krishna consciousness. That's amazing. So see it that way, because that's actually the process. That's, you know, it's not that you can be detached in one day or 1 week or 1 year. Your detachment, as I was saying, it's proportionate to the level of Krishna consciousness you're on. And some of us, it's like we want a level of detachment that doesn't correspond to our level of advancement. We want symptoms of Krishna consciousness that are higher than the level we're on. It's like you want the 10th story view from the first floor. You can't have it. You have to, how do I get that 10th story view? You have to get up there. So as you get up there, then you'll have it. And so don't be discouraged that you're on the first floor. That's the view you're going to get from the first floor. That's all it is. It's a first floor view. Not going to get anything better, right? That's the idea. So, and then, okay, let's say I slip up, I make a mistake. Now the question is, am I still sincere? Do I still want Krishna consciousness? Okay, I made a mistake. Do I still want Krishna consciousness? Yes, I do. So now let me align my practice. Let me increase my sincerity. So my sincerity then will align my practice. And then my practice will strengthen. You know, it's like none of us should think, well, I can just be a strong devotee. I could think myself into being a strong devotee. Nobody should think that way. I have to act myself through my sincerity and then act into being a strong devotee. And as I act, the sincerity will manifest in the purity with which I act, and to the degree I act, in the intensity of the action. Like, you could look at your life, and you could right now think of something, a weak link in your life, something weak, whatever it might be. Maybe your rounds aren't good, maybe you're not regulated, maybe you're not taking care of your Krishna consciousness well, as you should. And then you ask yourself the question, well, if I were more sincere, would that be going on? And most likely the answer is no, it wouldn't. If I were more sincere, I wouldn't allow that. I would be more careful, right? So sincerity is your power. It doesn't mean you're more advanced. It just means you're more willing to do the process. And the process, that's what's going to purify you. So it's, okay, I can be sincere, but I have to do something that'll purify me. So sincerity alone in and of itself, it doesn't really mean much. It's like, it's like the idea, I love you. And the wife says, where's the car in the house? If you love me, like, show me. Okay, I know you love me, and you say you love me, but can you show me? Because I really don't know if you love me, because you haven't shown me. Right? Yes? Yeah, you understand?
It's materialistic to show the love for some car and house.
But that's...
Is it okay to the family?
It is what it is. It's not okay or not okay. It's just, that's what it is. You expect certain things. So you also show Krishna. Show him certain things, right? Your love. It's like Prabhupada said, your love will be shown by how you cooperate. And that was in response to Prabhupada asking in his last days that devotees come and be with him. And Tamal Krishna Raj said, I'm sure they'll want to come and be with you because they love you. And then Prabhupada took off on the word love, and he said, your love for me will be shown how you cooperate to keep this movement together after I'm gone. So he defined love. So what I'm saying is you can define sincerity. You can look and ask yourself, if I were more sincere, would I be allowing myself to do certain things? And you'll find, obviously, if you were more sincere, maybe you would eliminate certain things. Right? But your state of consciousness, it obviously is affected by your practice. There's no question. But certain attachments and conditionings will remain because the process of purification is gradual. But they're not really problems. And that's why you have these examples of water in a calf's, a little bit of water the size of a calf's footprint. So the material world becomes easy to cross, just like a little puddle. Or the fangs of the serpent, they have no poison, they can't do anything, so the senses are like that. So you have all these examples. Thakur Haridas overcoming Maya personified. You can very easily cross over the ocean of material existence if you surrender. So it's nothing about our strength, but it's about the process and the intention with which we execute the process. So therefore, we can be very confident of our advancement. To be very, very confident. As long as you have that level of sincerity, you're very safe. Now, hi kalyana krit kaschid durgatim tatta gacchati. One who does good is never overcome by evil. So now we have some questions. Let's see, I mentioned about the guru, so Eddie is saying, she's saying, well, let's make sure no one else has any questions. Yeah. So, anyway, before we answer the questions, We've already gone an hour. That's amazing. Conditioning is never a problem. It never is a problem unless you think it's a problem, unless you give energy to it, unless you weaken your sadhana or lose your sincerity. It's not a problem. You can always contain it. But when you don't practice properly, then that conditioning can disturb or destroy you. Otherwise, it's not a problem. And how can I say it so confidently? Well, I gave you some examples, but one additional example. If it were a problem, how could Prabhupada start his movement in America? Because the people he started with were highly conditioned. They weren't Brahmins. If conditioning is a huge problem, then you would start your movement with Brahmins, or maybe limit your movement only to Brahmins, because Brahmins are the least conditioned. They're in the mode of goodness. So let's spread Krishna consciousness only to Brahmins, because everybody else is too fallen. And so Prabhupada didn't start his movement with Brahmins. So that shows, and it has happened to many devotees, where they would, I think Satyrup Maharaj, he heard one lecture and he decided to become a devotee. And that's happened to quite a few devotees. He just went to somebody, Satyrup Maharaj or somebody. I think he said he went to a kirtan, and after the kirtan, then he decided, I'm going to be a devotee. After one kirtan. So that really shows how conditioning doesn't hold you back. You have that desire, and then you connect with a pure devotee in the process. The first day you come, you can give up everything. No, he said, Satyrup Maharaj said, I was listening to a talk about how he became a devotee. He said, I came to the kirtan, and after one kirtan, I decided to give up meat eating and illicit sex. After one kirtan. That's amazing, isn't it? So that's the power, right? So if you think of these examples, then you understand, wow. This material energy can never stop me. My conditioning can never stop me. As long as I'm sincere and I want pure devotional service and I'm willing to execute the practices to get it, then I don't have to worry. It doesn't matter who I am. I may be nobody. I just may be a young lady from Argentina feeling like I'm nobody, or a young lady from, where in Russia are you from? What town?
Moscow.
Moscow. A young lady from Moscow thinking, I'm just another one of 150 million Russians. Who am I? But you can become very, very elevated. All you need is to want it. So, in answer to your question, when Prabhupada was asked, he said, well, Prabhupada, how do you become sincere? Because this whole talk is about sincerity. Sort of thing. And Prabhupada gave a very interesting answer. And he said, just be sincere. And if we want to unpack that answer, it really just magnifies everything I'm saying. It's saying that sincerity is a choice you make. Because you could render service purely, right? Or you could render it impurely. And you are in charge of your mentality, your attitude. Right? And I should render service purely. That's what I should do, and the Shastra tells us to do that. And so now it's up to me whether I do that or not. So then I can define my level of sincerity. How much do I want to do it? Now, you could say if I continue doing devotional service, I would become more sincere. In one sense it's true, in one sense it's not. Because you might find somebody, right in the beginning he comes to the temple and he decides to become a devotee, and he's extremely sincere. And it wasn't based on any Krishna consciousness he's done in this lifetime. So, it's not entirely necessarily a fact, at least on the level of sadhana. Maybe on a higher level, of course, it's going to be different. But on the level we're talking about, anybody can be sincere. Maybe you don't have so much ruchi for the holy name, but you can chant sincerely. That's for sure. So the answer to your question is, be sincere. And can I lose my sincerity? Yes, by not being sincere. By becoming discouraged by your conditioned, allowing your conditioned side to overwhelm you. So let's answer some questions. Eddie says, I have a question. Who chooses the disciple to the guru, or the guru chooses his disciple? Well, as one of my godbrothers said, he said something very interesting when one devotee was asking a similar question. I think she wanted to take him as guru, and she wanted to know what it means. And he said, the guru doesn't need disciples for his spiritual life, but the disciple needs a guru for his spiritual life. So primarily, it's the disciple who chooses the guru, but the guru has an obligation not to initiate the disciple who's not qualified, because that contaminates the process and can contaminate the guru if he's initiating disciples just for name and fame. But this doesn't entirely mean that the guru can't choose the disciple also. Sometimes Prabhupada would see someone, but it has to be reciprocal, but he would very quickly say, yes, you should get initiated, come. So both are there. But ultimately, the guru, every guru will always be willing to accept a disciple who's sincere. But then it's up to the disciple to accept the guru. So ultimately, it's their choice. In other words, a guru may decide to accept you, but that doesn't mean you've decided. You have to decide. Right? So you shouldn't think, oh, he's the only guru who's accepted me. Maybe no one would accept me. No, that's not why you choose him. You choose him because you're inspired. You want to serve. You want to surrender. You want to hear. Right? So, if we go back to my example, then you could say, Krishna chooses your guru. That's there. By your sincerity. When Krishna sees you're sincere, okay, now it's time for a guru. Because what are you going to do with a guru if you're not sincere? You don't need one. Because until you're willing to follow somebody, why would you need a guru?
It means all of the disciples are sincere because they have guru in ISKCON.
I think it means at one point they were. You can always have bad motivations or wrong motivations. Your motivation, you have a guru and he's a big powerful guru, and so you think if I get initiated by him, then I'm one of the disciples and there's a lot of prestige.
But Krishna is the guru.
Yeah, Prabhupada said that, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said something very interesting. Prabhupada always said, you want to be cheated, Krishna will cheat you.
Mm.
But Bhaktivinoda Thakur said something, it doesn't relate exactly, but it's general. He said that sometimes people want to be cheated. So Krishna manifests bogus gurus. For people who don't want a genuine guru, Krishna will send them someone bogus. Now, sometimes it was said that if your guru falls, it means you're not sincere. Which I don't agree with, because if somebody comes to ISKCON, they have Prabhupada as their guru. So if their guru had difficulty, I don't think it means they're not sincere, because they're still sheltered by Prabhupada, and they're still sheltered by so many Siksha gurus. And the shelter of the Siksha guru is what's most important, not the Diksha guru. But certainly people could be ill-motivated, and certainly Krishna can allow them. Maybe Krishna will trick them. They'll choose for the wrong reason, and their guru will purify them. That's possible. But generally a guru should understand if the person is trying to use him, then he wouldn't accept him.
The guru who has many disciples, and the guru can initiate the villages, not only families, whole families.
Yeah.
it means the Guru scan all of them, or just they give mercy to everybody and chance like this?
Both.
Or all of them
It's
sincere that they can...
It means both, and it also means that in India, if he doesn't do it, someone from another organization will do it.
I see.
It's also a connection to the Sampradaya.
Yeah.
Connect them to Prabhupada and the Sampradaya before they get connected somewhere else, which may not be advantageous.
Okay.
So that's the real thing after Diksha is Siksha, where you get who's giving you instructions. That's the Goswamis. They were considered disciples of Lord Chaitanya, but they weren't initiated. Because getting their Siksha from Lord Chaitanya was considered as good as being initiated.
Yeah, sure.
No, I'm good. Okay, so we have some questions. So, that was an interesting question. Who chooses the guru? Sometimes they choose each other. Anything can happen. Yeah, you could say the guru chooses out of his compassion and kindness. He sees someone who needs help, and he extends his kindness. So in that sense, he's choosing. You could say Prabhupada chose all Americans. You know what? I don't know if you ever heard this. It's amazing. When the movement was young, sometimes Prabhupada was questioned. He said, well, how many disciples do you have? And Prabhupada said, everyone is my disciple. Some admit it and some don't. So in that sense, you could say Prabhupada chose all Americans as his disciples. And then some accepted it and some didn't. It's interesting, isn't it? Yes, the Guru is also choosing. Why not? But again, my point is that if you want a spiritual master, or if you have a spiritual master, you want to think more about your qualifications as a disciple. That's what's most important for you. And if you're the philosophy is if you're qualified, you become qualified as a disciple, Krishna will send you a qualified guru. Or Krishna will send you the right guru that you need. Or Krishna will send you a Siksha guru that you need. Is that okay? Excuse me for pointing my finger, but that's where all these questions are. Okay. If you have any more questions, just you have to log in to go onto chat. You have to create a password, right? Password and login, and then you can go into chat and ask your questions. Okay. Sita Leela says, does sincerity and self-motivation are they interrelated? And also association. Sometimes and that's all I can read. I can't open it further. I don't know how to open it. So can you type another message? Sometimes and then send another message. It's only allowing me to read one line at a time. So anything that goes past one line, you have to send it as a separate chat message. At least on my phone. It's not happy. It's not reciprocated. Okay. Sincerity and self-motivation are interrelated. They can be. You could say, if you're sincere, everything good will come from you. You could say that, right? Yes? Or what I would say is that even if you're not self-motivated, if you're sincere, eventually you will become. Like whatever problems you have, your sincerity will help you work through them. That's what I would say. Yeah, Prabhupada's Godbrother said that sincerity is invincible. It's like nothing can destroy it. So, if you wanted to sum up this whole class, you could say that if you have sincerity, then nothing can stop you. It's all powerful. Because Krishna will always help a sincere devotee. If you're sincere and you're not motivated, and you need to be motivated, increase your sincerity and focus on that desire to be motivated. You see how Krishna helps you. Is that all right? Well, once you try it, you can report back to us in the next class if that worked. You direct your sincerity towards your specific need. What you need in your Krishna consciousness. Sounds like we're flying, doesn't it? Can you hear the fan? Sounds like a helicopter. Well, if we were in a helicopter, we could have gone to Calcutta and back just during this class. Like a rich person, flying to Calcutta, and go to a restaurant, and fly back. I mean, if you have, if you're making like $1 million a month, you have to spend it on something. So fly to London for dinner, fly back to New York. Tomorrow night, fly to France. Why not? But still not as good as demigods. Okay, any other questions? Last class we had lots of questions. Everybody go to sleep? Or if you haven't logged in, then you can log in and ask a question. Don't let your material desires discourage you or disappoint you. Just don't give them energy. Don't worry about them. It's like there's many things that we just have to accept that's how they are. I may be a certain way. I'm not saying accept it in the sense that you don't do anything about it. You do something about it, but just accept that that's how it is now. And in that acceptance, you can also let it go. Okay, that's just how it is, but I don't have to do anything about it. So it's there. I'm attracted to this. So what? I'm not going to do anything. It's how it is. Like ladies. I'm going to tell you something about men, which is extremely disgusting. Once you hear this, you're going to divorce your husband if you're married, and if you're not married, you'll never get married. So you may want to turn the camera off now and not hear this, or leave the room. Man's nature is so wired to be attracted physically to women that a man can be with his wife, walking with his wife, even holding her arm in arm, hand to hand, and be distracted by the beauty of another woman, and think about enjoying with that woman. It's so crazy, right? So, does it happen to devotees? It happens to everybody. Because we're trying to be devotees. So these desires show up, and what do we do about them? We don't do anything. It is what it is. It's not important. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't have any relevance to what I'm doing. It's just, right? It's like, it's 10 o'clock at night and it's time to go to sleep, and you're thinking, I want to have a double cheese veggie burger, and you're dying to have it, and you think, it's 10 o'clock at night, that's stupid. So you just go to sleep, right? You just forget about it. It's just stupid, So there's so many things that come up, and they're just stupid. And you have to just look at them and say, okay, I don't know where this is coming from. It's like, sometimes I think, you ever been so hungry, you're like, go crazy if you don't eat in a few minutes. You have to eat. Or you've ever been, it's like so thirsty, like, you're going to knock somebody over to get a drink of water, And And when these things happen, then I think it's just part of being a conditioned soul in a physical body. That's what it's like. It's not like I have to eat this double cheeseburger right now. That's not what I want. I just want to read Krishna book and go to sleep. That's what I want. But the body's going, feed me, feed me, feed me. Or the mind's going, think of this. The heart's going, do this, get this. Tell this person how nasty they are for mistreating you. You know, the body, it's just buzzing, right? Vacho, vegam, manasa, krodha, anger. Udara jiva vegam, udara pasta vegam. You know, the body's just, it's buzzing. It has to talk, it has to eat, wants to enjoy hearing, seeing. So like we're in this physical body, and it's just, but it doesn't mean that it has really anything to do with our desire in Krishna consciousness. It's just this body is just buzzing around, pulling us. And we're in it. And sometimes it gets hungry, or sometimes it gets so tired, you can only think of one thing, which is going to sleep. You can't function, because you're in the body. And so you realize that. It's just the body demanding things, because I'm inside it. Once I'm outside of it, I won't even want those things. Right? So it's just part of being in, you know. But now I'm in a disturbing situation, my mind's agitated. 10 things are going wrong at once. It's because I'm situated in a body. If I wasn't, I wouldn't even care. Okay? Is that alright? So?
Anuradha wrote the question. The last one.
This question is from?
Anuradha.
Anuradha. Anuradha. Anuradha, are you in Las Vegas now?
She is.
Yes? Oh. Now the question is it hotter in Mayapur or is it hotter in Las Vegas? I will guess it's hotter in Mayapur.
In Las Vegas also is hot weather.
Yeah. It's Anuradha, it's 100 degrees. It's 102 here.
That's so.
How about Las Vegas? I don't think it's 102. It's probably in the 90s. It won't get that hot yet. It's only April. Okay. For people who are not devotees, but have spiritual inclination, how we can help them to overcome their conditioning. You know, you may remember in one of the classes I gave a long time ago, I said that I heard a lecture by a Christian, and he was talking about conditioning and material desire and all of this sin, and how difficult it is to overcome. You know how difficult it is to overcome habits. And so he was talking about it, and how devoted you have to be, how sincere you have to be. There's so many good qualities you have to have. And when I was listening to him, I was thinking, these people are unfortunate that they don't have the Maha Mantra. So, the best way to overcome conditioning is the Maha Mantra. But there, you know, there's like emotional conditioning or psychological conditioning. Yeah, that people who aren't Krishna conscious, they can overcome that. But the conditioning that I'm the enjoyer, I'm the controller, that can only be through devotional service. So, you know, my experience is that you find somebody interested in the Krishna consciousness, give them service, engage them. And it's easier for them to chant when they're engaged. Because that's that whole conversation with the Jamil. And Jamil had done so many sinful things, and then there was this idea that he should perform penance. Not penance. What's the word I'm looking for? When you perform an action to counteract another action.
Repentance.
Repentance. There's a word for it. You should perform. What's the word I'm looking for? I've gone brain dead. Too much sugar cane juice.
Sugar helps, actually.
Not helping me. Prayaschita, atonement. The whole section of that chapter of Jamil is about you don't become purified through atonement. So, only bhakti is purifying the root of the desire. So yeah, so there's things that you can do to help people overcome bad habits, and there are many experts who can do that, but the essence of material conditioning is only purified by bhakti. You know, the source of all that conditioning. I am the enjoyer. I am the controller. You can't help people. I mean, you can, help people become more service-oriented. You can help people can, through material processes, come to the mode of goodness. You can help them, but you can also get to the mode of goodness through bhakti. But to get beyond goodness, obviously they can't without going into bhakti or some spiritual process. So yeah, there are things that would help people. I was just listening to a man who said, it's by changing people's diets. Just their consciousness changes so much. Just, material things that you could do to help people overcome certain bad attitudes. Or just by showing someone affection, they could be a very unhappy or nasty person. By showing them affection, they could change. Like, how do you make friends with animals? You pet them, you feed them, and you speak sweetly to them. And that's the way you make friends with humans also, right? Feed them, pet them, and speak sweetly. At least that's my philosophy. So, if you pet, feed, and speak sweetly, you have a lot of power to help people. Right? Okay, anything else? But if you try to help someone without Krishna consciousness, the only reason would be is to help them come to a platform where they can take to Krishna consciousness. So maybe they're in such a bad situation they can't take to it, and then you help them get to the platform where they can take to Krishna consciousness, or get them to the platform where they can be interested in hearing. So if people are in Sattva Guna, it's easier. Sometimes we might help them get to Sattva Guna, and then it's easier, right? Now I'll finish with something amazing Prabhupada said, which might confuse you. It's not a good way to end a class, confusing people. But when Prabhupada was with the devotees in London, he said that, or in India, in the early 70s, he said it's not enough to get people to chant. Just chanting alone won't help. They have to follow the process. So the process is sadhana along with chanting. So if you can help people engage in some kind of activity of bhakti, then that certainly will help them the most. They may have other habits that they'll need other ways to overcome. That's another thing. Okay, anything else? Okay, so we're going to end here. And then next Saturday, what is that?
Sweeping outside.
Oh.
On the street.
Is it?
Sweeping. Somebody.
Next Saturday I should be able to get class. Next Sunday I'm not sure, because I'll be in Mauritius. Anyway, play it by ear. Sweeping upstairs.
Maybe.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanand. Hari Hari Bol. Go Ranga.